There we go. Ready to roll. Good morning. It's nice to see you guys on this chilly morning. I appreciate what you said about the Old Testament. I've got a good joke. It's a bad dad joke. What was what was Boaz before he met Ruth? Ruthless. It's one of my favorite ones, man. Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty pathetic. I know it's almost worth a second laugh over again when you're kind of like, oh, that's so bad, it's funny, you know. At work this week, I had a visit from my Fanuc salesperson who sells us Fanuc robots and things like that. And she offered me to go out to lunch with her. I was like, oh, absolutely, I like a free lunch, you know. And so we go to lunch, and we were talking about reading and history and things like that. And she said, what are some things that you like to read now? Because I had said, when I was younger, you couldn't pay me enough money to read, but now I'll read. And I said, maybe stuff that's kind of theology or philosophy. And from there, she was captive audience, basically. She's sitting there, and she can't just up and leave, right? She wants to sell me robots and stuff. So, so I said, I've been reading the Old Testament. And I said, have you ever read it? And she said, well, no. She said, but isn't there just a bunch of rules and stuff like that? And I was like, oh, no. You gotta read it through the lens of kind of the New Testament. We got to be careful because reading it through the lens of our American culture is probably the worst thing you can do. You need to understand the Old Testament. And yes, it's, especially like what Exodus and Leviticus, bull without defect. It wears on you. But if you try to, and by the way, if you guys are ever struggling with that, like I struggle with that, there's a really great app, Bible in a Year, and it has some devotions attached to it too. And sometimes you can listen to it, it actually has an audio capability too. So when you're driving along, you can listen to it. It's pretty awesome stuff. But I was trying to explain to her that the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament is that these rules are not just about you got to do this thing. It's you can know who God is. Psalm 1:1. He focuses on the law of the Lord, and as the law he meditates day and night. That is how he knew who God was. And you could see her wheels turning a little bit. And so we talked about this for a while, and I guess it kind of dawned on me that a lot of people might not understand. Most people, I guess, don't read the Old Testament. But then if you do, some people don't understand that. I think we try to read it as in context of today. So encouragement for those of you who are like me who struggle with reading at times, do it. It's really worthwhile. The Bible in a Year, you got to commit some time to it, but it's really good. It's really good. So I guess with that being said, Studley, would you like to come up and share?
Unbeknownst to Brian, that was a good lead-in to what I was going to share. So this is kind of a to be continued from last week when I shared about James 1, and goes along with what Jerry had shared in his prophetic message. So just to remind you that in James 1 it says, ask boldly, believingly, without a second thought. And this is from one of my favorites, C.S. Lewis and Mere Christianity. Now, faith, in the sense in which I am here using the word, is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted in spite of your changing moods. Now, I don't know about you guys, but occasionally I have changing moods, okay? So just remember that, okay, that sometimes you have changing moods. For moods will change, whatever view your reason takes. I know that by experience. Now that I'm a Christian, I do have moods in which the whole thing looks very improbable. But when I was an atheist, I had moods in which Christianity looked terribly probable. The rebellion of your moods against your real self is going to come anyway. So let me repeat that for you right now, okay? The rebellion of your moods against your real self is going to come anyway. That is why faith is such a necessary virtue. Unless you teach your moods where they get off, you can never be either a sound Christian or even a sound atheist, but a creature dithering to and fro, with its beliefs really dependent on the weather and the state of its digestion. Don't be tossed back and forth. Ask believingly. Consequently, one must train the habit of faith. This is tagging on what Brian just said. Okay, this is how you do it, which is cool because I love C.S. Lewis because he's practical. The first step is to recognize the fact that your mood changed. The next is to make sure that if you once accepted Christianity, then some of its main doctrines shall be deliberately held before your mind for some time every day. This is why daily praying and religious reading, or app listening to, and church going are necessary parts of Christian life. We have to be continually reminded of what we believe. Neither this belief nor any other will automatically remain alive in the mind. It must be fed. As a matter of fact, if you examined 100 people who had lost their faith in Christianity, I would wonder how many of them would turn out to have been reasoned out of it by honest argument. Do not most people just simply drift away? It's a good thing. It's a good thing to be in the Word. It's a good thing to be in fellowship with other people. It's a good thing to be reminded daily, moment by moment, what we believe. And it's a good thing to come to the Lord and ask Him for things and believe it.
Thank you very much. That is very good. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to share? Except Steve, not Steve.
As we were worshiping this morning, I was sitting there holding Malachi, and I just had some thoughts. One, where two or three are gathered, there I am in your midst. And I was just thinking of listening to the worship and knowing that Jesus and God is here with us. And I also had three other thoughts. One is I believe. I thought of the whole salvation message, I believe, which is not enough. Second thought is I accept. I accept what God has done. I thought about that for a while. And the third is I am grateful.
Amen.
I was ordered by my wife to share this. And before I do, I want to preface it with a couple of verses. Well, a story. I was reading a book, and the first chapter, the author kept saying, "You are slaves. Don't forget you're a slave. You're a slave. You're a slave. You're a slave." I said, "Oh, man." I mean, I realized doulos and servant, and the Lord showed me a verse. Of course, you know it. And because you are sons, God has sent forth His Spirit, sent forth the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, "Abba, Father." Therefore, you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. And then I'm going to read a poem, but I want to also kind of justify one of the verses. Let us rejoice and be glad and give glory to Him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come and His bride has made herself ready. So we know that we're the bride of Christ. And this is awkward because it's not on paper, but I'm going to try to read this poem. It's called My Brother. My brother is the King. Christ Jesus is his name. Brighter than the stars, eyes burning like a flame, seated on the right hand of our Father God. Pure white robes trimmed in red from the grapes he trod. Though brothers we may be, my Lord and Master he, for higher than the mountains he towers over me. Lofty and exalted, holy majesty, far higher than the mountains, he towers over me. Though our Father be our God, and mighty counsels feared, his tender heart is weeping, and for sinners seared. Crowns are cast before him, by angels he's revered, yet by each sinner saved by grace, his Father's heart is cheered. So to a cross my Father nailed my brother kind and brave, and smothered by the pain for sinners he would save, wrapped in linen laid to rest in the dark and gloom, now risen and victorious from that borrowed tomb. His Father made him king, many children we, for by his blood he bought us, this Lamb of Calvary. Lofty and exalted, holy majesty, from war he rides triumphant, meek and righteously. On his throne now, a blaze of glory, Jesus Christ by God's side, all glorious within, the Queen in gold his bride. Grace is poured upon his lips, and by the church adored, he rose from war triumphant, Jesus Christ my Lord. Though brothers we may be, my Lord and Master he, for by his blood he brought us to the Father's knee, risen and exalted, holy majesty, for higher than the mountains he towers over me.
I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, when Donna talked about Jesus as our Redeemer and thinking about Redeemer from the Old Testament, the kinsman Redeemer was also the avenger of blood. So if somebody killed a relative, that was the person who needed to go and avenge that death. Satan, at the beginning, was the murderer, and he killed us, basically. And Jesus is the Redeemer, the kinsman Redeemer. He was flesh and blood. He was a man, so he's our kinsman Redeemer. And he's responsible for avenging our death. And he's going to do that in the end of the story. At the end of the story that we read in Revelation, he is going to come. And the song that we read was, that we sang, the universe, the hope of his returning fills the universe. And so I'm just hoping that all of you have that hope of his returning. He's coming back, and he's going to avenge all of these wrong things that have happened to us, and he's going to bring judgment. But then on the other side, the last 2 weeks in the study of Revelation, we've been looking at the Old Testament, and we have read scriptures, and I could list, I don't know if I'm going to get all of them right, but we've read things in Amos, in Joel, in Habakkuk, in Malachi, in Haggai, in Isaiah, and I could bring other Old Testament prophecies that talk about the day of the Lord. And so all of us who know the Lord are just hoping for his return. But if you do not know the Lord, that day of the Lord is a day of darkness and gloom and judgment. So what Steve shared, I believe and I accept. If you don't know the Lord, he is coming. And he is coming for his bride that made herself ready, but he is also coming to avenge and for judgment. If you don't know the Lord, this is the time. This is the time to submit and to say, I believe and I accept that Jesus' blood has paid the penalty for my sin.
Yeah, I'll try my hardest here to do injustice. He's saying that in the Old Testament, and I forget the people group, but they would sacrifice. Somebody help me out, Clay. They would sacrifice children. Molech. Yeah, what? They were adopting the culture there. Yeah, she's going to straighten me out here. All right.
It's interesting because there was a lot of hiding what was going on. And so parents were getting duped into it. And they would play drums and they would sing chants really loud, and the parents would bring their kids not really fully knowing what they were doing, and the chants and the drums would drown out the screams of the children that were being sacrificed on these altars to Moloch. And today, we hide what abortion is. Nobody that goes in there fully knows what it is. And the God may be different. It may be materialism. It may be selfishism. It may be different things, reasons why we go. But the altar's the same. And there are satanic rituals going on in abortion clinics in this country. It is a spiritual thing, just as evil as it was in the Old Testament.
Thank you. She said it better than I was going to flounder for a little while until I got to the point. So, anybody else? Got anything burning? Alex. No pressure, bro. Come on, man. We're family, bro.
The song. The last song we sang, sometimes it'll leave a taste in your mouth. And if you've read the Bible enough, you can remember where you saw it at. So this is in Revelations 4, and John's description of the throne room. And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to the one seated on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before the one seated on the throne, worship the one who lives forever and ever, cast their crowns before the throne, and say, O Lord and God, you are worthy to receive glory and honor and power, because you have created all things, and because of your will, they exist and were created.
Amen. Anybody else? Last call? No? Okay. Well, I just wanted to make a few announcements here. It's kind of a piddly little thing, but we have finally created a Facebook page that, if you're in the old Facebook land, you're welcome to come check it out. It's basically just so we can kind of keep in touch with what's going on. We'll try to put things in there, what small groups might be starting up and things like that, just so we can kind of stay more connected anyway, if that makes sense. As you guys came in the front doors over here, you probably saw some pretty nice looking woodworking business. You know what I'm talking about? Yep. And you know what that's for, right? The auction. Yeah, it's coming up on April 13th. And just a little side note, there will also be a 1993 CBR 1000F sport touring bike in there too. Just lobbing that out there for you. So show up. Bid on this awesome stuff. I'm pretty impressed with that cutting board out there. The thing's pretty nice. Let's see here. Brian, you want to come up and make an announcement about small groups?
How many of you want to see that bike in the front lobby next week? That'd be pretty cool. Our small group that's been meeting here on Wednesday nights has been going through Colossians and Philemon. We're about to do Philemon on Wednesday. But after that, our group's going to continue to meet for about 4 weeks. We're going to start in Philippians. So I wanted to open that up to anybody who isn't currently plugged in on a Wednesday night small group. If you are interested, see me at the break and I'll give you some more information. But we'll do a 4-week study in Philippians starting on the 27th.
Excellent. The bike is almost done. Not next weekend, but it's coming together anyway. Okay, so today, Sunday school upstairs with Robbie Marshall. Robbie, rock and roll. Going through Proverbs. Grounded will meet at 5:30 today in the library. They're going to go through 1 John. Are there any first-time visitors here today? Anybody fresh and new? No? I mean, we're all fresh still. I'm just, anybody first time, I guess. Well, awesome. We'll welcome everybody. How about that? All right, well, let's go ahead and release the children, and then we're going to take a nice short break here. Come back in time for the teaching.